Okay, before we talk about the modern stuff, we want to go back in time a little bit because we had a discussion this past week on the Drive-Thru that a lot of people seem to like, a comparison of business philosophies, finances, as you may call it, between Smoky Mountain Wrestling and ECW. The question was raised, well, Cornette, since everybody that wants to discredit your opinion says that Smoky Mountain Wrestling went out of business, then couldn't that be said that Paul Heyman doesn't know what he's talking about wrestling because ECW went out of business? And then we broadened it to that means anybody that ever went out of business didn't know what they were doing. But in this case, we compared Smoky Mountain and ECW, and we mentioned how much more spectacular the closing of ECW was with bankruptcy and in court and people owed massive sums of money and blah, 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 than the somewhat tidy folding up of Smoky Mountain was. But anyway, if you want to hear that discussion, it's on the Drive-Thru this past week, or it's also on YouTube. However, as I said, a lot of people like the discussion and they're fascinated by, you don't get a lot of talk of the inside of business like that from those days because people were more closed-mouthed and everybody didn't know what was going on. But also I got a related email this past week that brought something else up, and I thought we could tie all these things together because they said at the Superbowl of wrestling that Smoky Mountain Wrestling did in August of 95 in Knoxville, that was the basically the only thing that we did that rivaled in terms of gate and notoriety and et cetera, the Night of Legends event. But the main event was Shawn Michaels against Buddy Landel for the WWF Intercontinental title. And somebody had emailed me and said, well, why did you book that match, or how did you book that match? Knowing that you didn't like Shawn Michaels and what his reputation was and et cetera, how did that come about? And I figured I'd never told that story before, I don't think. Of all the deep dives we've done, I didn't go back on that match. And also, I thought we'd take a look at what we did that night and business-wise and how it compares with some other big shows that the modern economics of wrestling and the way that the shows are promoted and presented, and they cost sometimes a fortune and it's somewhat ridiculous. I thought we'd go back and look at the payoff sheets and everything. But anyway, the way the match came about, I was trying to have a follow-up concept for the show in 1995 that could follow the Night of Legends in 94, because by that point we had already started having a big show in Knoxville every August, starting in 1993 when I just put the main event with me and Bob Armstrong in, the culmination of the original go-round of our program where he would put me in the hospital, and it drew our biggest house to date. And I said, that shows they're willing to come in August. I know we had an attractive match, but let's see if we can top it the following year. That's when I put together the Night of Legends. And I researched that idea from Randy Hales, who did a Memphis Memory show that earlier that year. But I wanted to put a major card in the ring of modern talent as well as the Night of Legends thing. And that's why we got that big show. And then in 1995, I said, well, we can't do another Legends show. So I decided to try to do a Super Bowl of wrestling event where we would basically have championships from every major wrestling promotion defended. And the inside joke was we did everyone except WCW. And then I said every major wrestling promotion. So that was the concept, and because I was working with the WWE, WWF then, I wanted to get an Intercontinental title match. I never thought, at that time, Diesel, Kevin Nash, was the WWF champion, and I never for once thought about even attempting to try to book him if he would have come, if Vince would have given him to me. And considering some of the other names Vince gave me, he would have given him to me, but I didn't want him. For the exact reason that it would have been a shitty match that would have killed my big show. Who did I have in my territory that Kevin Nash was going to work with on an equal basis, sell for, have a good match, and attitude-wise, was he going to be into it and want to come and help a territory anyway since he had never been involved in the territory system? The answer to all those questions was fuck no, right? So in concept, I would have loved to have had a WWF championship match, but I didn't want the guy on my card that was the champion. So I pitched the Intercontinental title to Pat Patterson because at the time Jeff Jarrett was the champion. And I was setting this show up like I came up with the Night of Legends concept in May for the August show. So the Super Bowl, it was in May. This is how I'm going to end my summer. So as I said, Jeff Jarrett was the champion when I broached the subject. And Pat said, okay. And obviously Jeff's into it. Jeff knows how to work Tennessee wrestling. He'll have a great match with Buddy Landell, who that was the challenger all along because Buddy was my top heel at the time, but I was going to switch him babyface toward the end of the year as a result of how all this title match played out. So the working arrangement was that it was going to be Jeff, but then I can't remember the timing, but before we had announced anything about it, he came to me and said, well, we're going to switch the title on, what was that pay-per-view? The In Your House pay-per-view, like a week or 10 days before the Super Bowl show in Knoxville. We're going to switch the belt to Shawn Michaels off of Jeff. And I'm like, fuck. He said, but you can still have Shawn. Yeah, like, is Shawn going to want to do it? A lot of people got to remember at this point, Shawn Michaels was not full-blown Shawn Michaels yet. He didn't have the greatest track record of being a nice guy and a friend to all furry woodland creatures, but he hadn't got the big push yet. He hadn't got into the thing with Brett yet. It was just all starting. So while he was a prima donna, he wasn't a complete asshole. And at that point, since I hadn't started managing Vader yet, I don't recall any issues I'd had with him. Says, okay, so they arranged it to be Shawn Michaels. And the way that we advertised it to make sure that we didn't give anything away was on our television. We promoted their pay-per-view as well as our event. We said that Jeff Jarrett will face Shawn Michaels on, I think the date was July 23rd. On July 23rd at the WWF In Your House for the Intercontinental title, the winner of that match will face Buddy Landell here live in Knoxville at the Coliseum at the Super Bowl on August 4th. And that way we had 1 week of TV where we could reveal that it was going to be Buddy and Michaels, and that's when he did that great interview, My Own Worst Enemy. And we sowed the seed with him Iggy and me out of the picture and telling his true life story and how this was his big chance in his hometown. We sowed the seed for him turning on me. Anyway, and Michaels came in and he was a professional and did the thing and they had a good match, even though he complained about the amount of blood in the ring from the previous match, Michaels did. But anyway, that's how that came about. It was originally supposed to be Jeff Jarrett, and we fell into Shawn Michaels because that's what they were doing with their belts. So have I told that story before?
I'm not sure if you have on the air or not.
Well, now I have. But as far as as I said, mentioning the economics of wrestling, this was a full-fledged territory local promotion of a major event. And we tried to tie all the sponsors and everybody that we could get involved. That was also while Fan Week was going on. You were down, right, that year?
I was. I'll never forget the in-ring promo from Judge Auto Dealer.
Oh, my God. But this was a full-fledged, for the people who wonder, well, how do you promote a live event in the days before you just mentioned it on the internet and everybody that was going to come came anyway and you got nobody else because nobody else knew it was happening? We'd been pointing to this for a month on television. We had a program on the Fox affiliate every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. In addition, we did radio spots. I mentioned the high-priced WIVK radio spots, and we also did television commercials with Fox 43, and we also bought spots on, as I recall, Channel 8 back then was showing the WCW program. We also had the guys at the Coliseum early that day between noon and 3 for the Fox 43 Kids Carnival. White Boy and Tracy and Boo Bradley and Brad Armstrong were out there making nice with the kids. The first row Golden Circle tickets, because we had the highest price tickets in Smoky Mountain Wrestling history. Front row was $25. The rest of Golden Circle, the next 3 rows were $15 each. And then we went to the normal $10 ringside, $8 general admission, $6 kids. But the front row ticket holders not only got the early meet and greet with the stars with refreshments at 6 o'clock, but they got waitress service from the local Hooters girls, courtesy of Hooters. So you could call the Hooters girl over, give her the money. She'd go to the concession stand and get your hot dog and your popcorn and bring it back to you. You didn't have to leave your seat because this was a long show. I mean, we had people, as you said, Judge Auto Dealer from Classy Motors was there doing a promo. All of our sponsors were involved. Did we have Mrs. Winter's Chicken at that meet and greet? Was that when we had the Mrs. Winter's deal going?
I don't recall that at all, so I don't know.
Well, but at one point we had a sponsorship with Mrs. Winter's Chicken. And the guy said, hey, I'll bring a chicken spread and everything, for your, not only would he do VIP and meet and greet parties, but just for the boys before the show. And I'm like, well, I'd rather get the cash. No, he told me a giant fried chicken breast from Mrs. Winter's cost him 12 cents in 1995. So there was a big markup. Anyway, we had promotion going on all over everywhere. And finally the night came. I'll give you the card real quickly. The opening dark match was D'Lo Brown against Brian Armstrong. That was a dark match because we were shooting television that night also. Then the opening match of the show.
If I could just jump in, that kind of ties into what you were talking about before with Jeff, because remember, Jeff left the WWF when he lost the Intercontinental title. That also finished up everything with the Road Dogs. They were building towards Brian Armstrong being revealed as the real singer of With My Baby Tonight.
Yeah.
And we never got the payoff to that because Jeff left. And then right away, the Road Dogg was gone. And this was right on the heels of that. He shows up on this show.
Right, because he rode up with Bullet Bob. And he was going to go work in Memphis because I was working with Randy Hales at the time on the USWA SMW feud. But anyway, the opening match was supposed to be Flash Flanagan and Chris Michaels against Rick and Scott Steiner. Because we were shooting this for television and also for a videotape. And I wanted to have the Steiners, a big name tag. And I called Rick and he said, oh, sure, we'll make it. And then I called him back after we'd already, I think, announced them the first week or whatever to get some details. And he's like, well, I talked to Scott. We're going to need $1,000 apiece. I said, what? Because when they worked for me the previous year, it was 4 days in a row, but I paid them, I think, $1,500 or whatever. So I was assuming, $500. It's 3 hours from Atlanta. And I said, I can't pay you guys $1,000 a piece just to be in a match, Rick. Come on. He said, well, I'll talk to Scott. And then I never heard from him again. Guess where they were that weekend?
I don't know.
In Philadelphia for ECW.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah.
Heyman had swooped in and said, I'll give you $1,000 or whatever. So either that or they were trying to get me to outbid him because he gave him $750. Anyway, so I took the Steiners off. And that was the Headbangers' opportunity to come in. They had just started. They just got the gimmick. And they come into Knoxville and have a nice match and get a win in the opening contest. Then we had the grudge tag team match where Boo Bradley brought in the Mongolian Stomper against Tommy Wildfire Rich and Terry Bam Bam Gordy. The Midwest Heavyweight Championship was defended Marty Jannetty and Al Snow. And the reason why the Midwest title was Gary Woronchek, local promoter and longtime fan in Michigan. That's why I was on one of his shows when I found Bruiser Bedlam. He had been using Al and at the time put his belt on Al because, Al was a great worker. So I went to Al and I said, who in the business can we get that you can have the classic wrestling match? I had grudge matches. I had tag matches. I had whatever the fuck. I wanted a classic pro wrestling match. And he mentioned Sabu. And I said, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. And then he said Chris Benoit. And I said, I love that. And we called Chris, and Chris was somewhere overseas. And then Al said, what about Marty Jannetty? And I said, if he's on, he's great. So we got Marty Jannetty, and they had actually a little bit too long of a classic wrestling match because this was a big show anyway, and they were out there a while, but they great pro wrestling. So that's what I wanted. Then the Battle of the Giants took place when Unabomb faced The Undertaker. And that was and you've seen clips on the WWE programs. That was the first time that Taker ever got in a ring with Glenn Jacobs. And that was specifically because, A, it was a marquee match, my giant against the most over giant in wrestling, but also because I was scouting and I was representing Vince. Here's your next fucking pay-per-view guy for Undertaker and Big Show and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, well, the Big Show wasn't around then, but you know what I mean. Then a grudge match because we got to get Bullet Bob Armstrong involved. Bullet Bob against Barry Buchanan, who was the Punisher. And, of course, he was my bodyguard at the time. So I was involved in that match. Then, for the NWA World title, Dan Severn against Bobby Blaze. And obviously it wasn't, any trick to book Dan. He was happy to come in, and we always treated the NWA with respect. Bobby Blaze was shitting himself that he was going to get stretched. He wrote about it in his book. I came in the bathroom, I think, in West Virginia somewhere. I said, I'm going to book you in Knoxville against Dan Severn. He was in the middle of a piss, and his piss stream just shut off. Like, whoa, fuck. For the USWA Championship, Billy Jack Haynes, who was their champion at the time, took on Brad Armstrong, who was my top babyface. The main event, when it was going to be Jeff Jarrett and Buddy Landell for the Intercontinental title, that was going to be the part of the double main event. The last main event was going to be for the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Championship, the Rock and Roll Express against Tracy Smothers and Tony Anthony, the Thugs, the Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony, the Thugs. And that was going to be a brand new matchup. We've gone over that in the past. Ricky Morton's and Tracy Smothers' significant others got in a knockdown, drag-out fist fight, and there was all kinds of heat, and we had to part company with Ricky for a couple months because the police were involved, and his girl was the one that wouldn't drop the charges. So I brought the Heavenly Bodies back from their one-year run in the WWF to take on Tracy and Tony, and actually that started the fall program with the Bodies and the Thugs. But so that was making chicken salad out of chicken shit there because I was shitting myself literally over not being able to fulfill one of the two main events that we had pointed toward. But the Bodies were so strong, the people. Well, you were there. Maybe did the people like it better?
Best. It worked out for the best. I don't think Rock and Roll versus Thugs would have been anywhere near as epic as the Bodies versus the Thugs. That was a fantastic match. The table spot with Tom Pritchard was one of the craziest things I ever saw live.
Went through it. They didn't break it. They went completely through it like a manhole suddenly fucking opened up and got stuck in it. And Tom's juice job, the blood just flying everywhere. I think that was why Michaels was upset. Not only was the ring still bloody, but also he had to follow that, and it's going on midnight by the time we got that main event in the ring. But then he and Buddy had a great match, and it ended up I'm the one that cost Buddy winning the Intercontinental title in his hometown after all those years of his struggles, and the people were ready to see him fucking pickle me, and then we milked it for another week or two until we did the full-fledged thing, and then there you go. So anyway, as I mentioned, that was the card. We also had the TV crew there. We shot a 1-hour television program with Jim Ross and Les Thatcher, and also shot all the matches for a videotape that unfortunately never got released. I'll, go over that here in a second. And we didn't even put the tickets on sale for this show. Here's the thing, because they charged you in Knoxville every day the tickets were on sale. And we say, you know what? We're gonna do this way because it's at the first of the month, August 4th. So we put the tickets on sale on July 27th. Because we knew that the Golden Circle was going to go quick, which it did. And then we basically did a 1 week on sale, and we ended up, hold on here. Where's my right papers? I'm going to get the right one here. We had 80 $25 seats, right? And we sold 79 of them. We had one comp out. But we did 290 of the $15 seats, 1,832 of the $10 seats, 1,357 of the $8 seats, and 379 of the $6 seats. And basically, the total with the gate was $37,775. Paid attendance was $39.37. We had 350 comps of the cheap tickets out to the radio stations and TV stations, so a total of 4,287 people. So you do over 4,000 people and you do almost $40,000. And by the way, that $38,000 in today's money is $65,580. This was for a town that we ran once a month, and it wasn't a new standalone thing, and that's except for the big national promotions. That's not a bad house. But here is another example of the economics of pro wrestling. We did that whole show and still walked out with, where's my check receipts? We walked out of the Knoxville Civic Coliseum with $15,400 because the TV commercials were $340. The radio spots were $1,560. The rent and building expenses, that's ticketing, that's ushers, that's police, that's all the Knoxville Civic Coliseum expenses for the 5,000 plus seat arena, $4,476.19. Sandy Scott was a heck of a negotiator. We paid $200 to the ring crew, $200 for extra help. The Time Warner cable truck that we got from Charlotte was $2,750 for the rental. We rented the TV lights from a place in Atlanta for $490 and had one of the ring guys haul them up in a trailer. Remember, that's one of the big lighting trees that Pam Lawson went to throw out T-shirts at the Night of Legends and they knocked over. We got better ones that were unknockable overable the next year. $108.72 for the soft drinks for the meet and greet. The Hooters girls were $84. I think we had to give them like $16 a piece or however much that works out to. And my producer and technical director, my audio guy, my tape guy, 3 camera guys, the lighting guy, and a grip all together were $1,950, which left talent and transportation. Now, most of the regular Smoky Mountain Wrestling talent was on weekly guarantees at that point of between $400 and $500. In other words, if I ran 2 shows that week, guy on a $400 guarantee got $200 for each show. But if I could run 4 shows, then technically they'd only be getting $100 per show. I put them on weekly guarantees so that I could reduce the cost of the individual spot shows and run more to have some more money coming in. Same time, honor the guys' guarantees. And I know people are saying, well, $400 or $500 a week. Well, here's the thing. $500 then is equivalent to about $863 now. And if I said to a lot of professional wrestlers, you can live at home, you can drive no more than 3 or 4 hours to your shows, you can work between 2 and 4 times a week for me and make $863 a week, and you've got 3 or 4 days a week that you can go work in Memphis, or you can take other dates if you want to, or you can just stay here and be home and off 3 or 4 days a week. That, especially with the alternatives at the time where the guarantee in Memphis was $40 a night, they liked it. And then, as I've mentioned, with guys like the Rock and Roll Express, yeah, they were making $500 a week wrestling for me, but they were fucking doing a couple thousand a week on gimmicks and in cash since the statute of limitations has run out. So that's why a lot of the guys who weren't signed to one of the big 2 companies and who could work Southern style wrestling actually preferred to work my end instead of the Memphis territory at that time, because Memphis's business was down, but they were still running a full schedule. So you were making the same amount for working twice as many days in some cases. But anyway, since some of these guys weren't regulars, some of them required transportation, we had the highest talent and transportation cost of any card that we had ever run, $10,233. for everybody. Shawn Michaels, I paid $600, and his plane ticket was $924. Of course, that's obviously, in some cases, Vince would send me guys, and he'd pay them something as well, but that's the same thing I gave the other guy in the main event because I gave Buddy a bonus, so he made $600 for that match too. Billy Jack Haynes worked in the match with Brad Armstrong. He was from Memphis. I gave him $200. The USWA champion was barely making more than $200 a week back in those days in Memphis. Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey, they got $300 because they came in and saved my ass. They started working regularly, so they were on a $500 a week guarantee. Plus, they were splitting their time and going to work for Randy in Memphis also, but since this was a big show and they saved my bacon, they got a bonus. The rest of the regular Smoky Mountain guys got between $100 and $200 a piece. The USWA guys, PG-13, got $125 a piece. Dan Severn, I gave $400. His plane ticket was $242. Jannetty worked for $300. Undertaker and Paul Bearer, I gave both $600. And because either would have been insulted if the other hadn't got the same thing they did, but also bought Percy a $600 plane ticket. Taker drove over from Nashville. And that goes down to, wait a minute, and young Brian Armstrong. Actually, that was the biggest payoff of his career outside the WWE so far, since all he'd done is work for me in Memphis. He got $125. But anyway, Randy Hales was there. I gave him $100 to entertain me. And so the combined total expenses for the rent, the advertising, the talent, the transportation, the TV crew, and the truck we shot with was $22,391 on a $37,000 gate. Oh, and I forgot about the state tax, but nevertheless, you could make money like that if you could do that in a different market a couple of times a year. The problem was, and we had a show the week later in Johnson City, Tennessee, where we made several $1,000s because it was a smaller show, but it cost us less. And that's what I was saying, is we just couldn't find an affordable way to get on television in any markets like Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, West Virginia, wherever, that would have allowed us to build the market and be able to do these big shows where we'd come out with $10,000 or $15,000 a head in one night a few times a year. But boy, how things have changed. The finances have changed in wrestling. Now, it used to be if you were a wrestling promoter, it was a license to print money. Now, if you're a wrestling promoter, you need to print money. And by the way, we need, the Coliseum demanded that we have 11 ticket takers at the door, but that only cost $330.
When did you know you were going to turn Buddy babyface? Because I'm trying to think when before that he would have been a babyface last. Was he a babyface anywhere after 1982?
At some point, probably in some iteration of a Knoxville promotion. But the thing is everybody in town knew him because he was such a, he was out and about talking to people. You knew when Buddy Landell was around. And they all knew he was from Knoxville, and some of them had known him since then. And as he, healed, it became, and also I was needing, something fresh. And because 95, as I've said, had lagged. We couldn't get any new markets, and we'd finally quit running Beckley, West Virginia, because it just wasn't going to happen. And I thought, these people will get behind Buddy, which they did, but we just didn't have very long to work that deal. Oh, and I forgot also, here on the Knoxville Civic Coliseum statement, they charged you $30 for a telephone operator to answer the phone in the box office and tell people when tickets were on sale. But the previous show on July 15th, we had broken one of the tables. So every month we broke a table, they would they would bill us $74.50 for the table. And that's why we broke all their tables, because they had 1 million of them. They were those old particle board tables, and they were cheaper than going to Home Depot and buying one. And besides that, the fans knew what the Coliseum tables looked like, because they all had Knoxville Civic Coliseum stamped underneath them. So if you brought in a ringer table, they'd know it. So we always had the fucking announcer's table set up in the same place. And somehow, when it got broken, not every show, it was that the wrestlers happened to end up on top of it rather than it was being set up and made a shop class project out of. But they were only $74.50 a piece. So that was a steal at twice the price. Anyway, any questions before we move along?
No, that was my big one. Was just when in the process of getting to that show did you know you were going to turn Buddy babyface?
Well, it sometime, as I said, in the summer, when I just said, okay, we ran Buddy and Brad, and there wasn't a lot of other people for Buddy to work with as a heel, and I thought that, hometown boy and me and him promoing each other, we can get some mileage out of that. So sometime in the summertime, and then we just worked that direction. And and one more thing before I go, I hadn't thought of these things in ages. That month, the month of August 1995, we also got $2,635 from the UFC, from Semaphore Entertainment, for advertising one of their first UFC pay-per-views. Spectrum Rents kicked in $595. Classy Motors paid $600. We got $100 as a fee from a cable system in Washington, D.C. for running the program. The last $4,100 of the Fan Week income we took out of the bank. Got $225 for merchandise and $2,076.24 from Bill Behrens' 1-800-BUY-THIS-SHIT PI numbers that he ran on our TV. So those are the economics of territory wrestling.